Carter from Georgia, running for president.
An outsider who rose from the southern soil to the ultimate seat of power.
I'd like to announce that I am a candidate for president.
America turned to Jimmy Carter after years of upheaval, a person of integrity to calm a pained nation. Born in 1924, his boyhood home lacked electricity and indoor plumbing. They were peanut farmers, and at an early age, Carter declared himself born again.
I worship Jesus Christ, whom we Christians consider to be the Prince of Peace.
As World War II raged in the Atlantic and the Pacific, he attended the U.S. Naval Academy, graduating in 1946. Just weeks after receiving his commission, he married 18-year-old Rosalind Smith, his lifelong neighbor.
I went over next door to look at the little girl who was a newborn baby on the street. So I've known her ever since the first day she was born.
The Carters' growing family traveled the country on military assignment, and Jimmy worked on launching America's first nuclear submarines. When Carter's father died in 1953, Jimmy left the Navy and took over the family farm.
And I'm proud of a heritage that shows concern for the working men and women who are the backbone of our great nation.
It provided the platform to launch a political career in the turbulent 1960s when civil rights and Supreme Court rulings were changing Southern politics.
But I didn't realize at that early age that my friends' mothers and fathers couldn't vote. They couldn't serve on a jury. The schools were inferior.
Carter ran for governor, lost, and came back 4 years later to win in 1970. He became the face of the New South, painted in Dixie colors on the cover of Time magazine. But Carter didn't have much time to build a national profile, constricted to just one term. He announced his bid for the White House during his final weeks in office, and Carter was so unknown that a television quiz show panel was unable to name him.
Come down to Georgia to see us.
All right, we'll come down here and make a movie. Thank you for being with us.
Southerners were long written off as presidential contenders, and few thought Carter would make it. The New York Times wrote, as a national political base, the governorship of Georgia has been only slightly more awesome than the governorship of American Samoa.
Obviously, I'd like to win all the primaries. I can't deny that.
But Carter was propelled to the nomination by early wins in Iowa, New Hampshire, and elsewhere, defying expectations as Watergate and the Vietnam War had shaken Americans' confidence in their leaders. He was accessible and candid, sometimes too candid, like when he caused a stir admitting to Playboy magazine, "I've looked on a lot of women with lust." Carter said he regretted the interview. His opponents pounced.
Couldn't understand, frankly, why he was in Playboy magazine. And we'll give him the bunny vote.
Carter went into the general election with a big lead until October, when the race tightened between him and President Gerald Ford, who had a quarter-century's worth of experience in Washington. But on election night, Americans turned to the peanut farmer.
If I can tap the greatness that's in you and in the American people, we can make our nation's government great and a source of pride once again.
Carter walked the mile-and-a-half length of his inaugural parade hand in hand with Rosalind to display his openness to the American people. The president sought to lead by example throughout his administration, a frugal commander-in-chief conserving energy by putting on a sweater.
The press office was chillier than usual today. He ordered the thermostats in the White House turned down to 65 degrees.
His focus on foreign policy would define his presidency, for better and worse.
We will not seek to dominate nor dictate to others, as we Americans have concluded one chapter in our nation's history and are beginning to work on another.
My father, Mika Brzezinski, who had been informally advising him, joined his staff as National Security Advisor.
He had a good sense of humor in a kind of waking you up in the morning fashion.
But President Carter was serious about making a lasting impact on the world. A treaty over the Panama Canal, an agreement with the Soviet Union on nuclear arms control. Yet his proudest legacy was his most personal. As governor of Georgia, Carter had traveled to the Middle East and bathed in the River Jordan, inspiring him to aggressively seek peace in the Holy Land. He studied the profiles of the leaders of Israel and Egypt and brought them to Camp David for 13 days of tense negotiations.
Begin and Sadat were so completely and personally incompatible. They couldn't even be in the same room without exploding in anger. So I kept them apart. They never saw each other for 10 days.
At its end, peace accords, uniting bitter enemies.
The scene in the White House last night was almost unbelievable. Menachem Begin of Israel and Anwar Sadat of Egypt in a bear hug will be the first time in history that an Arab nation has agreed to a peace treaty with Israel.
Foreign policy was the high point of his presidency, but also the low. Islamic fundamentalists took control of Iran's government and seized the American embassy, taking over 50 American citizens hostage. A crisis Carter was unable to resolve.
That was the worst year of my life by far. I never went to bed the last 3 days I was in the White House to get the hostages released.
Tensions escalated with the Soviet Union.
The Cold War was the critical issue. The president was decisive.
In 1979, when the Soviet Union went into Afghanistan, I warned Russia, that Soviet Union then, if they went into a different country, we would respond militarily with all the weapons that we had at our disposal.
It led to a boycott of the Olympic Games.
I would not support the sending of an American team to the Olympics. Ours will not go.
There were other crises on the home front. In a nationally televised address, Carter spoke to what he called a crisis of confidence in America.
This from a Southern governor. Mr. President, you're not leading this nation. You're just managing the government.
Though initially well-received, many objected to the tone of what was soon dubbed the malaise speech. Challenged from within his own party, Carter persevered, but his re-election bid was devastated by 10 simple words.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Carter left the White House humbled, but not anywhere close to finished with public life, founding the Carter Center, a concrete building set into a hillside, a sturdy foundation for unprecedented ambition, with an agenda for seeking peace in global hotspots, housing for the homeless with his passion for Habitat for Humanity, and being a voice for the diseased and depressed.
We treated 36 million people for what the World Health Organization calls neglected tropical diseases. And this year we'll go over 70 million people. That's about 7 times as many as live in Georgia, as a matter of fact.
Out of office for more than 4 decades, he defined the modern post-presidency. He faced the final challenge of his life with the same abiding faith that propelled him into history.
Good morning, everybody.
Teaching a Bible class a Sunday after announcing treatment for brain cancer, and soldiering on with a belief in God and a love for his fellow Americans that lifted him up and brought him back.
No matter where we are in the world, we're always looking forward to getting back home.